Good morning. Being the first speaker, I'd like to thank Julia Kinas for your kind invitation to come here, join you here. Second, I'd like to help to thank Renz and also ask him where is my device. Okay. Good. Well, for the people who may know me, know that I'm not that mainstream economist, and my views do not necessarily reflect the views of the European Union, especially on topics like that. Having said that, I stress that I do not represent necessarily the European Union views, though the youth unemployment problem has necessarily a market viewpoint on behalf of me. The second thing I feel that it's necessary to stress is that economists gradually distance themselves from the real world economic issues. And I have recently read an old speech of a well-known economist, Ronald Coase, who said, if economists would like to study about horses, they would never go to look at horses, but they will theorize about horses, saying what I would do if I were a horse. I'm afraid that this is pretty much the case in many institutions designing economic policy. And the third thing, before my beginning, is that never trust an economist who starts his presentation with a graph. How it works? Okay. What do we? The green one, okay. A graph. Well, one picture equals 1,000 words. So, you see a success story here. Youth unemployment in the EU. It says today, but the last indicators we have are from August 2013. Things might be a little bit worse right now. Greece is the champion, 61%. Spain follows with 55% or something. And the average of unemployment in the EU overall is about 23%. Well, the interesting thing is that, as this graph shows here, with a remarkable exception of Denmark, Netherlands, Austria, and Germany, in the rest of the European Union, the rate unemployment, the overall rate unemployment, is half of the youth unemployment. And this is also a very interesting point because we have a pattern here. This is econometrically a persistence because it is like that all the time. Before the crisis, during the crisis, after the crisis, it's going to be the same. Youth unemployment is always double than the actual rate of unemployment. And this is a map. Well, in this map, we see that there are some localities, some concentrations. The overall market, the common market of the European Union, has completely different results of success in employing young people. You see that Spain and Greece are the champions, though Germany, Holland, Denmark, Finland are much more successful. The rest of them, with the exception maybe of Italy and Slovakia, have an average result, more or less matching the results of the European Union as a whole. Well, this means that the picture shows us it's not necessarily a market failure because in the overall market works differently in different places, and the more well-educated, market-oriented countries have significantly better results from those with other kinds of mentalities, including dysfunctional institutions. One of the reasons why we see this kind of differences has to do with the mentality of the people and how we view things. We are discuss about it later. The economics of the problem. We said that we have a persistence in regards of the econometric indicators. It's not necessarily to be a statistician or to have a background in macroeconomic econometrics to see the pattern. However, I don't necessarily believe that it is a fact of market failure because some issues regarding the way things work have a very strong structural and institutional dimension. In countries like mine, the structural view is very, very different in the way the country, the state is organized than in most other places. And this causes very big dysfunctions and suboptimal allocation of resources. The second thing has to do with the promise of full employment. This was a very well-known story from the past that economy should employ everybody. I'm afraid that it is a dream that we have already, we are already grown to believe that it works like that. First, it is not feasible to have full employment, and if it was feasible, it wasn't necessarily desirable to have full employment. We can discuss it later if you want about it. The other important thing I'd like to stress is that independently of what markets do, there are also macroeconomic considerations that affect markets. We have the collapse of the financial sector. This resulted in the collapse of everything of every other sector, and this is not something related to the dysfunctionality of the system to provide optimal allocation of resources through the signaling of the price system. Well, we have adverse business cycle. We have inefficient monetary policy. It is very important to stress here that the ECB, the Central Bank of the European Union, contrary to other central banks, has not a mandate to control the unemployment rate. We also have a painful and slow deleveraging process, and most important than all, we have very big demographic shifts. All Europe becomes older, and this may have strong impact on pensions and other social security programs. You need 5 young men to pay 1 old in pension. There is also the social dimension of the problem. Contrary to the popular view, in a liberal economic system, the most important is the efficient function of the market. No, in a liberal economic system, the first and foremost is to have free people, and the second is to have happy people. If you are unemployed, you cannot be happy. In Europe, and when I'm talking about Europe, I speak Europe in its entirety, from Vladivostok to Alaska. We are like that. We believe that the people should grow and use its economic appearance in the market, also in the society, through a decent job. If we have not a decent job, we have social exclusion. Youth unemployment is a source of social exclusion, and this is the very first problem we need to address. And whenever we have a policy in the European Union, addresses not necessarily the employability of the young people, also it reflects the need of social inclusion of the young people. Another big problem we have in the European Union is the mobility. Though it's very easy to go from one place to the other, it's impossible to settle in a place because of the language barriers, the preferences, biases, and things that divide people in terms of cultural distances that, despite the fact that we are a union of about 50 years old, more, we cannot overcome. There is also a dimension regarding the inclusion of young immigrants coming from all over the world. You know the immigration problem we have. Young people coming from different parts of the world Most of them are coming from agrarian societies, and they suddenly find themselves entrapped in the urban system, which is completely different in a completely different country. This is very important to find job for people, or to find a way to create opportunity for those people to get immersed in the European society. Finally, there is the problem of loss of human capital. The problem is that in most of the cases, unemployment is considered a short-term problem. However, when we are talking about youth unemployment, the effects are coming later. European Union has attempted to resolve the issue by making a lot of policies about it. You see, technically, from 2009 up to today, we have every year a policy. Barroso Commission, for example, started by saying by 2020 we will reduce the poor people of the European Union to 20 million. Of course, he will never succeed to see this program happening because of the rigidities of the financial crisis. But the persistence of the macroeconometric indicators regarding youth unemployment led us to a European youth strategy in 2009 and 2010 voted in the parliament, and a new initiative later, Youth Opportunities Initiative. And then we had systematized our view by stressing the need for more concrete and active policy, given the fact that unemployment is national competency. It is not a competency of the European Union. Youth Unemployment Initiative is a flagship program sponsored by the European Social Fund, which has the Youth Employment Package and the Youth Employment Initiative. The most important thing regarding this program is the Youth Guarantee, well known. Technically, it says that all young people under 25 will find a good quality of job, apprenticeship, stage, or another education opportunity of good quality 4 months from leaving formal education or their last job. And this is the time of passion for us in the European Union, because practically this never worked. The Youth Guarantee, Youth Guarantee has a huge problem. When we decided Youth Guarantee, the concept was to make governments to create structures so as to accompany people, young people, in a transition from education to a job, or from one job to the other, and establish a career pattern. However, the way this funding was used by the member states, who have the competency of doing that, was exactly the opposite of what it meant. Instead of using the funding to create those structures, they used it as a fiscal assistant to companies so as to hire few people. You get this job for 3 months, the funding is ending after 3 months, you're out. That's all. But the problem is that I don't think that it's just poor implementation of the policy from member states. Numbers speak again of themselves. Well, the funding for the youth guarantee was 6 billion euros. For 6 million young unemployed in European Union, it equals 1,000 per unemployed. And because it was for 2 years, it was 500 per unemployed. Peanuts. ILO suggests that what European Union needs in order to create these necessary structures is 4 times what they invested. 21 billion. But still, nobody wants to pay this money in the short run, first because everybody wants to escape from this thing. And this is very interesting because we, as European Union, guarantee and save banks in a total amount of approximately 2 trillion euros, trillion, 2 with 12 zeros, and we do not pay 21 billion to assist young people. Technically, in the consideration of us in the European Union, youth is not too big to fail. We don't care to pay more money now. The other very interesting thing is that we are already openly speak about youth unemployment scandal. Even the TV channel of the European Union speaks about youth unemployment scandal. The other thing I would like to stress is that everything is about skills. Unfortunately, we are equalizing diplomas with skills. I was about to tell you a personal story about it, however, my moderator is very strict on that. If you can convey him, I can tell it, so as to be a little bit illuminating. But since this summer, European Union focused less on theoretical things and more about skills. What should be done? We don't believe that we are going to solve the issue in 2 or 3 years. To be frank, if somebody is serious about growth and jobs, he creates growth and jobs. If somebody wants to have a resolution of something, he's going to bring a resolution of something. I don't think necessarily it's a failure of market, but it is the persistent failure of Homo politicus to act on basic things as Homo economicus. We believe that building social partnerships between people and firms is the very essential first step. However, just dealing on the subject in the governance level of national competency is not enough to solve the issue, especially now with all these fiscal constraints of the member states. We need a higher level of coordination, and we need to incorporate all this attempt for resolving youth employment problem within the structures of a more harmonized common fiscal policy. My proposal is to incorporate this thing in the European semester, which is the vehicle for further fiscal union within the European Parliament, and to include it with country-by-country recommendations on the unemployment policies. And last but not least, I believe that ECB should incorporate in its mandate the need to target an unemployment rate. This is the technical thing. I was about to speak 2 more hours, but no problem. We can do it later. Thank you so much.